Welcome everyone to the Traveler's Road to Decision study presentation by Google. My name is Sean Auckland. I'm going to be hosting today and sort of moderating our Q&A. With that, we'll kick off. I'd like to introduce Katie Galambos and Jacqueline Liu, our sort of leads at Google for this study. And just before we pass it off, I'll do a few housekeeping items. If you have any issues joining or asking questions or anything related to the Hangout today, go ahead and post on tweet us at Google Travel. We can assist you as quickly as possible. Also, if you have any questions about this study as we go along, we have posted on our Google Plus event page, and you can just post a comment, and we've saved time at the end for Q&A. So with that, I'll just pass it over to Katie and Jackie.
Hi, thanks so much, Sean. Hi, everybody who's joined. Welcome to our annual presentation of the results from our research study, where we investigate travel consumer research and behaviors. And for the first time, we are coming to you live from a Google Hangout on air. This is our 6th year working with Ipsos Media to provide an updated view of the travel consumer in 2014. And the overall goal of today's discussions are focused around assessing the intent, how devices are playing into consumer decisions, different channel functionalities, and the overall role the internet plays in travel decision. Again, with the ultimate goal of just understanding how travelers research and gather information. My name is Katie Galambos, and I'm here with Jackie Liu. We are both coming to you live from the San Francisco Google office and are both part of the Google Travel team. Also with us, we'd like to introduce on our live Hangout on air as well, from Ipsos MediaCT, we have Amanda Abry and Jane Kang, who will explain a little bit about the methodology behind the study.
Thank you, Katie. So respondents completed a 20-minute survey focused on travel habits and attitudes. In order to qualify to become a respondent, they had to be 21 to 64, live in the United States, have no sensitive industry employment, so no travel people, go online at least once per month, and have some involvement in personal or travel decisions. In addition, we routed people in the middle of the survey to answer questions about airline, cruise, lodgings, car rentals, or vacation packages. We had a total sample of 5,000 consumers, 3,500 personal travelers, and 1,500 business travelers. And they had to have traveled at least once for personal reasons or a minimum of 3 times for business purposes in the past 6 months. And finally, we had one augment of affluent travelers, 1,500 of them who have a household income of $250,000 a year, and they also were personal travelers. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Amanda. So before we get into any of the nitty-gritty, the details, we wanted to give an overarching theme and sort of mantra to return back to throughout today's discussions. And overwhelmingly, through all of the data that we went through to put together today's themes, we kept coming back to the overwhelming advent of digital and how that's really playing a tremendous effect through the entire travel process. So today, again, we looked at travel behaviors and preferences and how they shape the travel research and booking process. We will revisit a couple themes that, for those of you who have been joining us for the last few years, are the loved and often returned to topics. So we'll be looking at smartphones, we'll be looking at the different phases of travel, and we have some new and more detailed looks at a couple recent trends having to do with video and brand opportunities as well. So back to the common thread throughout this story, this ubiquitous effect that the digital world is having and is extremely prevalent throughout the travel industry. We're seeing it have an extremely marked effect on travelers in 2 main ways. One, how travelers are looking for and consuming information. We see the whole industry becoming more fragmented and seeing tons of new touch points through. And we also see how travelers interact with brands, and we see that changing. Whereas it used to be a one-way relationship, a more push type of relationship from the brand, digital is now facilitating two-way conversations and much stronger engagement. This is ultimately leading to new expectations and new standards that travel consumers are having throughout the industry. They're digital, and they expect you to be digital as well. In fact, we see we see brands that are digitally savvy are actually experiencing a benefit and are actually able to shape consumers' preferences around that brand just based on them being digitally savvy and having a very pervasive digital presence. That means across platforms, that means video with smartphones, that also means having a very seamless experience. 49% of travelers agreed that they have a more favorable impression of a travel brand based on these things. So ultimately, the future of travel is about using digital connections and information to improve the travel experience. It shouldn't distract from the experience, but it should enhance it and utilize many new opportunities that we are about to dive deeper into.
So for those who missed it, here's just a quick slide on our methodology. Thank you, Amanda, so much for going over that. But this is a quick overview into some of the different segments that we had in our study this year. Great, so I'm Jackie, and I'm really excited to kick off our inspiration trends in our Traveler's Road to Decision study this year. As in many ways, I personally feel that inspiration is such a key stage in travel that allows marketers to really catch the attention of travelers. But in a lot of ways, it's kind of overlooked from a marketing perspective. As we've noted in previous years, the majority of travelers turn to digital before they even know how or where they want to travel. This is likely because digital provides the most information at any given time across devices. And when we look at the types of sources that inspire leisure travel, we see that friends and family and the internet are equally critical in influence. Now, this is the first time in our study that we actually broke out the incidences of friends and family for online and offline. And as one might expect, in-person relationships are just as influential as digital, perhaps because in-person relationships can involve deeper conversations than those that might take place online, at least as it relates to travel. But we thought this was a really interesting way to kind of break out online versus offline friends and family, sources of inspiration, and really see how critical digital is to the trip inspiration process as well. When we look deeper at the influence of various online sources, we found that social, video, and photo sites, in addition to search engines, are the top channels influencing trip inspiration. So for those of you who are familiar with Google properties, YouTube and Google Plus are two examples that play a key role in travel inspiration, with 42% and 17% of leisure travelers noting their influence respectively. Finally, just a quick note here to kind of underscore how important online travel videos are to the trip inspiration. When we look deeper at things like sight, sound, and motion, online videos are really a key source of inspiration because there's just so much that you can do in terms of connecting with travelers in a new way, creating emotional connections, and really getting people excited about something that they can really hear and see firsthand through video. Similarly to previous years, 65% of leisure travelers watch online travel videos when they're thinking about taking a trip, and 61% do so when they're choosing a destination. We'll touch on the key elements of video later on as well in this Hangout on Air, but for now, what we really wanted to call out here is that video is extremely influential in travel inspiration overall. And for those that are interested in influencing some of the earlier stages of travel, video is a significant driver here.
And before we move out of this inspiration discussion, we wanted to reiterate this wasn't anything that we even looked at before last year. A lot of times our marketing efforts and our thoughts around travel consumer behavior really starts with that research and moves through to the booking process. But the whole phase before research, all of this inspiration, which at many times can be before travelers have even fully mentally committed to going on a trip, has tremendous opportunity in travel. And like Jackie said, we did introduce video really early on in today's discussion, although, like she said, we do have a much later and expanded discussion on that in just a few minutes. Video in the inspiration phase is a hugely interesting topic because when we focus on the typical research and booking, it's much easier to measure. we have clicks, we have dollars transacted literally when we're talking about a booking. But in this inspiration phase, there's a lot of times only invisible and very immeasurable cues that are going on that many times are happening through these extremely visually rich mediums like video.
Great points, Katie.
But it is now time to move down into a discussion about research, again pivoting on how digital is extremely key throughout this process as well. So an area that we do investigate every year is just to see what sources travelers are using to influence, to plan, to research their trips. And across industries outside of this study, we consistently see traveler and just consumer in general information shifting from offline sources, to online sources. And we see that reflected with very strong numbers here in all of the digital sources. In fact, we see the internet as the #1 source, as we have seen for many years now, for both leisure and business travelers. And again, as Jackie said, we broke out family and friends there into offline and online buckets. This isn't something we had done before, but with as big and influential as social is getting, and with a lot of the new digital mediums, we wondered, what are people actually using? Are they using emails, photo sharing, social, or are they using those traditional face-to-face interactions? And we saw here that the online, the digital friends and family influencer is extremely high up on the list of sources that travelers use. So digital is big, online is big. So let's dig a little bit more into those online sources. Specifically, which types are the most influential? So search holds strong. We are very proud to announce that for the 6th year in a row, having done this study, it is indeed the #1 online source used by leisure travelers. Business travelers, as one might naturally expect, have stronger loyalty program tendencies and brand affiliations. So that's probably why we see search as the #3 source for them. Travelers are online, they're searching, and they are searching first. Search for many travelers is a first stop shop. The majority of leisure and business travelers use search before any other source. So the past 3 slides have been familiar if you've seen any of these presentations before. But what this slide is showing is something new and different this year that is extremely fascinating. So what we're looking at, in the rows, we see the different categories of travel. So car, hotel, air, and cruise. And in the columns, the 2 rightmost columns are looking at 2014 and 2013, so year-over-year data. But the whole slide is getting at is, what is the first source you go to? Here we're looking specifically at search versus brand.com, which we typically see as a natural second go-to source online. What do you notice? Consistently throughout the different subverticals, every subvertical has consumers going to search more this year than they did last year as the first online source that they use. And we see brand.com declining. That basically means that consumers across all travel categories are going to search first at the expense of brand.com sites. So let's take hotel for an example. Between 2013 and 2014, the percentage of people who started with search jumped. It increased from 18 to 26%, while travelers going to brand.com sites first actually dropped from 37 down to 31%. And again, we couldn't get enough. We wanted to dive even deeper to see what are people searching for. So we asked 500 people, do you use Google to plan your trips? If they said yes, we then asked, okay, what is the first thing you type into Google when planning a trip? We didn't specify what kind of trip they were going on. We intentionally left this question as vague as possible to get the best representation of answers. The words that you see are verbatim what 500 respondents typed in, and the larger the word, it means the more people typed in that same word. So we didn't tell them where they were going, and people still wrote location, assuming of where they would be going. They wrote destination, city name, name of location. We overwhelmingly see these destination-specific generic keywords as the first thing that travelers are typing in. Now we do see some brands. We see Kayak there, we see Travelocity, indicating that travelers do type in brand terms, specifically OTAs, and sometimes travelers use search to navigate to those OTAs. But this is just one phase. These are travelers who are still at the very beginning stages of planning their trips. So what about the rest of the purchase funnel? What about all those other types of keywords? When are they being used? Well, let's take a look. Whoa, there are numbers everywhere. Yes, there are, and that is because travelers don't have a defined path for keywords that they use to find information about a trip. So the assumption is that everyone starts with generic and ends on brand, which, if you look at the numbers, is definitely the overall trend that we see. That's undeniable. But it's not always a linear process. The number of travelers using generics at the end and brand at the beginning is still definitely significant enough to merit attention, to merit strategy, and to figure out what that means for your brand. Although business travelers are not pictured here, we do see that business travelers are more specific when it comes to brand searches. They do have specific needs, specific wants, but we still do see a wide range of keywords being used by the business travelers as well. We mentioned OTAs a couple slides ago, and we wanted to investigate the specific reasons. Why are people using OTAs? So it's not only for their distinct functionality or what most people typically associate as their selling point, their lower prices, which are definitely, as we see here, reasons why both business and personal travelers are turning to OTAs, but it's also a function of generally higher site tools and site options. 1 in 3 personal and 1 in 2 business travelers turn to OTAs for the better experience and options on the site. This speaks to the OTA industry as a whole. There is an expectation of a high level of performance and a high level of user experience across the OTA industry. Also significant on this list of reasons why travelers are using OTAs is brand recognition. 40% of leisure travelers use OTAs because it's a name they've heard of. That's why they're using that OTA. As we referenced at the very beginning of this Hangout, brand is becoming more important in the travel space, as evidenced here by this OTA example during the research phase of travel planning.
Great. So for this next section, we really wanted to explore some new questions this year that focused on the research phase as a branding opportunity as well. So when travelers are moving from inspiration to the research phase, the majority of travelers are really undecided about which brand to book with and how brands are really distinct from each other. This represents a big opportunity for travel marketers to really influence both leisure and business travelers. For the first time in our study, we looked at the certainty of brand to use when travelers began researching and planning a trip. Here what we're looking at are the results for leisure travelers across categories, with the dark green bars noting where travelers were absolutely certain about the brand that they wanted to use and book with. The middle bars represent the majority of leisure travelers who are considering multiple brands. And on the far right, we have travelers who are totally undecided about which brand they want to book with. So this is really interesting to me on a number of levels. So first, this data suggests that the majority of travelers across categories, hair, car, lodging, cruises, vacation packages, etc., do not have a default go-to brand. Second, we notice that air and cruise have the highest levels of brand certainty at 23% and 25% respectively. This may be due to loyalty affiliations and brand recognition. And while it's not shown here, we also examined business traveler preferences as well. So while business travelers were more likely to have brand preferences, the majority of business travelers still do not have default go-to brands when they enter the research and planning phase.
This is probably a good time to just remind everyone, if you do have questions as Jackie and Katie are going through this, please go to the Google Plus page and you can submit them, and we've reserved a bunch of time at the end for them to be able to answer your questions. So those are coming up as they're going through these. Please submit them.
Great, thank you, Sean. So another area that we focused on this year is the perception of brand differentiation and whether travelers can see a clear difference with brands across categories. As you see for car rental companies, hotels, air, cruise liners, or vacation package providers. What we notice here is that leisure travelers appear to be able to distinguish between hotel brands the most, and they can distinguish the least amount of differences between airline and car rental companies. So again, here, business travelers are probably more likely to be able to distinguish between brands, but not substantially more. The implications for marketers here are huge, and really what I take away from this is that the differences between hotels are more easily understood than they are with air and car rental companies. But across the board, more work may need to be done to really help travelers better understand how brands are differentiated from each other as they're shopping around.
Definitely, and in this slide, even lodging, which does score the highest, indicating that travelers can see a difference between hotels the most, is only at 65%. There's still huge opportunity across the board in travel.
Yep, definitely. So now those with loyalty programs might argue that this isn't necessarily the case for their guests, that guests really know the differences between their brands relative to others, and that's absolutely the case for many. But we use business travelers as a proxy for high loyalty affinity in our study, and we re-examined the impact of loyalty on potential booking decisions. Among business travelers, we actually saw a statistically significant decline in the willingness to make booking decisions based on loyalty programs than in previous years. Furthermore, 2 in 3 business travelers are willing to consider trying a new loyalty program if it offers new and differentiated experiences. So this can be good news and bad news for those with loyalty programs. As if you're able to effectively communicate your program differentiators, you could substantially grow your membership base. And finally, when we looked at what it would actually take for travelers to switch loyalty affiliations, we found that the leading motivators to switch are better perks and faster paths to reward redemption. This is the case not only for leisure and business travelers, but overwhelmingly for affluent travelers as well. So in summary, there remains a lot of opportunity for to brand and differentiate a travel company throughout the research phase, and that's really what we wanted to focus on with these new questions this year. The majority of travelers don't have a go-to default brand, and even those that are loyal are open to trying new programs and brands.
So on to many of our favorite topics of discussion: multi-screen devices, smartphones, and everything in between. Travelers are extending their activities from desktop, and they're doing the same things on smartphones. So let's take a bit of a deeper look. In this slide, what we're looking at is personal travelers, indicated by the right columns, and business travelers, indicated by the rightmost yellow columns. And we're looking at in what stages of travel, so inspiration, research, booking, and all the way through the trip, are they using devices? We've been asked this question a lot in the previous years, and that this is not a lens that we have ever specifically asked this question, and we've sort of the fact that people are using devices throughout, but these numbers substantiate that hypothesis. We see 67% of personal travelers do use their smartphones at some point in the travel process. And again, this new look is by phase. We see travelers using computers and tablets and smartphones across the travel journey. And again, one of the main takeaways is that there are numbers in all of these slots. So everything that travelers are doing on their computers and on their tablets, they're also doing on their smartphones. When we compare the usage of devices across these travel stages that we see here, we find that the smartphone comes into play both in the earlier stages that probably isn't as much of a surprise, but also in the booking. Those last-minute bookings are really increasing those overall statistics there. And a more detailed look, we see they're doing the same kinds of activities, but more specifically, where are they going? Is that the same across the devices? And we see that largely it is. And again, this supports the point that it's worth repeating again, people are doing the same things. They're looking to that smartphone for the same kinds of answers, the same kinds of information and content that they're looking for on a desktop and on a tablet. And interestingly, in some cases, more so. So we see here highlighted in the yellow, social networking sites and apps, we see travelers consulting their smartphones more for that kind of content. And when we look at this from a article or a travel category perspective, we wanted to separate out the information only in relation to personal travels here between research and booking. What everyone's eyes probably jumped to far right-hand column under booking and under smartphone. These numbers are fairly accurate and representative, especially when we look at the industries like lodging and like air, where we see for lodging roughly 1 in 5 hotels being booked on a smartphone. We do want to call out that with cruise and with vacation packages, there were some consumers who probably indicated this answer because of calling in on that smartphone and not booking through a mobile app or a mobile website.
So in addition to examining how travelers are really replicating some of their activities across screens, as Katie just mentioned, we also wanted to build on the notion that travelers are moving between devices to conduct or complete the same activity, which we really refer to as sequential device movement. So for example, we really wanted to know how travelers were using their smartphones to start an activity and then move to their computers to finish it, or to do more intense research, or starting on a tablet and then finishing on a smartphone, et cetera, et cetera. What we found strongly suggests that travelers are conducting a variety of activities across their devices, and that these early actions on smartphones specifically impact the ultimate booking, wherever it may take place. So one thing we were really excited to see in this year's study is that travelers rely heavily on their smartphone devices for travel inspiration before they're even ready to start planning. So again, if we think about, when people are, still trying to think about where they're going to go or how they're going to get there, and they're open and they're very receptive to new travel ideas, they're using their smartphones to find those ideas. 70% of leisure travelers use their smartphones for travel inspiration in spare, snackable moments throughout the day, such as commuting or waiting for something. Over half of leisure travelers are doing so when they're multitasking, doing things like watching TV, and over half use search engines on their phones to look things up. These percentages, it's worth noting, are even higher for affluent travelers who typically over-index for device ownership as well.
And I think none of these reasons that people are using their smartphones, they're commuting, they're in between activities, come as a surprise. I'm sure we all probably use our smartphones during those same moments. But travel is no different. Consumers are looking for travel information just like a lot of other types of information on their smartphones. And when we combine this with the earlier point where we discussed how what travelers experience digitally in relation to your brand makes them cast judgment and can actually have an effect on their perception. If that smartphone is the first place that they're encountering your brand, which this slide indicates a lot of travelers are first experiencing a brand or trying to find information on their smartphone, if that's the first place that they're encountering your brand and they don't get that digital experience, they don't get that sense of digital savviness, we've got to think about the ramifications from a branding perspective there, and really the opportunity to capitalize on that traveler when they're in the inspirational mindset and when they're on the device.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And one thing that I just wanted to point out as well is that if you look at this slide, at the bottom of the blue bar charts, 30% of travelers are using their smartphones for inspiration before they're even looking for travel ideas on their computers or their tablets. So this specifically speaks to the activity that they're doing on their smartphones with the anticipation of doing more intense research.
Ladies, one question that we got.
Sure.
We have a lot of people dialed in, and I think some people might be furiously trying to take notes. So we got the question of whether or not we're going to be sharing A, the video, and B, the deck.
Sure, great question. We definitely should have clarified that to begin with. We will have a YouTube Spectacular version of this able to be viewed at any time. You can pause and rewind and take notes at your leisure. And we can also make available some of these data points.
You heard it. Look forward to the YouTube spectacular, as Katie put it.
Thanks, John. So not only do we see that travelers are using their smartphones for inspiration, but nearly half of those who do so ultimately end up booking another way. So that's, sort of the 30% that we were just talking about, where they actively plan on researching on their computers or tablets. So in this case, another way refers to any booking outside of online via smartphone or calling on my smartphone. So this is true for standard leisure travelers as well as for our affluent travelers. The majority of leisure travelers who use their smartphones for inspiration, that 70% who are then moving online to complete their booking, is a huge percentage of people that are moving across devices to complete a booking. And this is just something that I really wanted to call out because it's definitely something we haven't looked at before. And this is people, saying that they actively plan on doing this after they've used their smartphones.
And again, as we mentioned earlier, what they're doing, these inspirational activities, are very difficult to measure, sometimes impossible. And this really provides a connection and a piece of data substantiating what they're doing on their smartphones is affecting that end booking result.
Absolutely. So the implication here for marketers is that it's really important to note that many travelers who book online or through another method may have really been influenced by activities taken on their mobile devices before they get to your site or before they call in. So it's really important to think about all the different touch points and the interactions that people might be having with you.
I think we have a timely question actually that came in just while we're on mobile. How did the percent break out between desktop and smartphone for research and booking compared to 2013?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we do look at these year over year, and the study definitely indicates that smartphone is consistently, if not rising in certain subverticals, a go-to source, and one of the top sources, especially up in that research and inspiration phase, where, like we said, it is the first source looked at, and again, it does follow through on the booking phase, mostly in the accommodations area is where we're really seeing the biggest jumps.
Mm-hmm. Amanda or Dean, did you have anything that you wanted to?
I was just going to note that beyond what you guys just said, that we don't show exact numbers because we did change the way we went about asking the question differently to recognize the change in the marketplace, but that also limits our ability to have exact trending numbers.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you for clarifying. So we see that travelers are moving between devices for a variety of activities. And here what we're looking at are the top 5 travel activities that leisure travelers do in which they started on one device and finish it on another. So again, we're referring to this as sequential device movement. And it's worth noting that the top activity that travelers conduct sequential device activities for is price and comparison shopping. This means that travelers are beginning to plan travel on one device and then pick up their research and comparison shopping on another. So while it's impossible to know what every traveler has been exposed to before he or she arrives at your website, it's really important to value the different interactions that someone may have with your brand across devices before they book. And when we looked at this on a category level, we noted that cross-device movement occurs regardless of whether you're looking at car rentals, airlines, lodging, cruise, research and booking, and vacation packages. What's really interesting to note here is that cruise and vacation packages see actually the highest percentages of cross-device movement. Mm-hmm. And this wasn't really surprising to us, but it was still good to have the numbers behind it. It's expected because these products could be considered by many to be among the more expensive and that require extensive research. So someone may start their planning on a smartphone but not feel comfortable making that booking decision just yet and want to do more research.
Definitely.
Conversely, there's other categories such as lodging that can facilitate much quicker purchase decisions depending on where you are, what your intent is, and specifically if you're a leisure versus a business traveler. Business travelers are exceptionally prone to last-minute bookings.
And a note on this slide, again, just to reiterate, this is looking at cross-device numbers like Jackie just said, but starting on one and finishing on another. So if we have travel categories like hotel, where we know that the most bookings are occurring, it means they're finishing on that smartphone if they book on a smartphone, and there's no need for cross-device. So it might actually reflect a lower cross-device number, but that in no way indicates that they're not doing those activities on smartphone.
Great, thanks, Katie. And it's also worth noting here that, while 75% of leisure travelers switch between devices to plan or book, 87% of business travelers switch between devices to conduct their travel-related activities. So if you are a marketer that's targeting business travelers over leisure travelers, you definitely keep into consideration that people are, the business travelers have a higher likelihood of moving between devices and being on the go and, indexing for digital device ownership.
Before Jackie moves on, we had a question come in again around the definition of an affluent traveler. Just to redefine that, it is household income of $250,000 or more.
Great, thanks. So finally, when it comes to how travelers are moving between devices, we see that the most common connector is search. 4 in 10 leisure travelers use search when they move from one device to another, but other ways that travelers move include navigating directly to a website, sending emails, or saving bookmarks to themselves. So, really what we wanted to call out here in this section is the notion that travelers, across categories, between business, leisure, and affluent travelers as well, are just moving between devices. And it's really important to value the different interactions that people might be having. Even if they're starting, even if they're at the very beginning of their travel planning process, or they're at their inspiration planning.
There will only be one ultimate booking, but there could have been about 10 touch points across devices before that. So we couldn't leave the topic of devices and smartphones without talking about mobile sites versus apps. We consistently get questions coming in about this. So let's take a look at the usage. So here we're looking at leisure travelers and business travelers and their use of mobile websites and mobile apps for booking. You'll see that we've highlighted the numbers for both sites and apps in red. And that's because they're using both of them to book. Both leisure and business travelers consistently, of those who have booked on a smartphone, book across the board when it comes to apps and sites. So what that means from a strategy perspective is both should definitely be the forefront of the mind. We do generally encourage mobile sites to have priority put around them at times just because we see sometimes that's the first place they'll go. And we see here with leisure travelers that slightly more bookings are occurring on the mobile site. But we do see such a high number coming from apps with the leisure travelers that it can no way be ignored. And in fact, when we look from a business traveler perspective, we see the inverse, in that slightly more business travelers are booking on their smartphones through the app than through the website. And again, we do generally attribute this to the loyalty function of the business travelers. So people are booking on their smartphones, and they're booking through sites and apps. We know that people also really engage with travel apps, and we wanted to know, why are they downloading them? So here are the top reasons that people are downloading the apps, and we see that 1 in 5 are downloading because the mobile site was subpar. So that indicates that the app probably wasn't their first preference. The first preference was the mobile website, but because of a subpar experience or a functionality that they couldn't find, they had to go and look for the app as a second resort. Some other popular reasons why people downloaded apps were travelers wanted their personal information saved, and of course we do see travelers downloading apps because they have future plans to use it or have rewards or loyalty memberships with a given brand. So this next point is absolutely fascinating. I'm not sure if it's on the screen yet. We'll wait just a second so that I'm not the only one enjoying the magic. We have our technical difficulties. All right, I think everything should be up and running. Thumbs up. Okay, great. So even after travelers download the apps, travelers still use websites as well. So this is a very interesting view. This is who have downloaded apps, where are they spending their time? On the far left, we see more time spent on the app, which is understandable if someone has downloaded the app. But in the middle, that rose color, apps and websites used equally, and more time on sites even after having a mobile app downloaded. This also indicates the importance to maintain priority of a website. The only people who can use your app are the ones who downloaded the app. And they're not even using it all the time. Everyone else is mobile website by default. And again, we have our angry traveler here. We could not leave this webinar without discussing this issue, the importance of a user experience in the travel industry. This isn't a new topic of discussion, but it is still highly relevant, and it's still a major pinpoint among travelers. The results of this year's study showed that it's even more important than ever, as people are wanting to do things on their smartphones more and more. Those experiences and those expectations from the consumer are rising just as well. Bad experiences don't just happen in apps. They happen across both sites and apps as well. 83% said they have experienced a poor mobile website or app. And of those, this is what's really important. Of the people who have a bad mobile experience, less than a quarter of them actually push through and finish what they were trying to do. So you have them. If someone was trying to go to your website and couldn't, you're losing over 75% of them. And it is worth noting that some of them did pick up on another device or did so later. But that timing is critical. With attention spans being shorter than ever, when a traveler and when a consumer in general is demanding information on their smartphone, if your website doesn't provide it, someone else's website will. We'll get more into that in just a moment, but focusing on some of the positive things that can happen after someone experiences a poor mobile website, what do they do? So like I said, we do have some that access the same site on that computer or tablet, but 40% of travelers who experienced a bad mobile website did something that had a negative impact on that brand. That included using a competitor's website. Like we said, 20% went directly to a competitor. That's handing competitors travelers. We also saw some people complaining on social media. We saw them telling other people about their terrible experiences. And overall, the likelihood of a consumer staying with the same brand on a device was only slightly higher than overall that consumer leaving the brand entirely or having some sort of a negative effect. So the chances are not great that if someone has a bad experience, that they'll finish it somewhere else. It is more likely that they're going to do something resulting in a negative effect on a brand.
Great. So the last segment of mobile that we wanted to examine is the incidence of mobile for in-destination activities and information. So we've talked about mobile for inspiration, we've talked about mobile for cross-device behavior, and specifically now we're talking about mobile for in-destination information and activities. So as I'm sure we can all relate to, smartphones are many people's go-to device when they're on the road, and travel is certainly no exception. There are tons of opportunities for brands and companies that are in market to engage travelers in many different ways. Many travelers call travel brands from the road, with airlines and hotels being no exception. So when in transit, we noted this year in our study for the first time that over 1 in 4 leisure travelers have called either an airline or a hotel from the road, and that roughly half of business travelers have done the same. So some of the reasons that we looked at for calling an airline range from general customer service inquiries to reservations and seat changes. Some of the hotel inquiries were largely concentrated in availability and booking information, directions, amenities, and nearby attractions or events. So it's really worth noting that if people are calling you from the road, are they able to find the information they need? Are you really understanding where that call is coming from? Once someone arrives at a destination, there's a range of ways in which they find out more information about what's going on, activities that are going on in destination, local events, etc. And travelers literally will walk around, they'll look up local websites and apps, they'll turn to online videos, and even other travelers that are with them. But what we thought was really interesting is that roughly half of leisure travelers rely on online sources to find local activity and general information. And this is, pretty much what we saw last year as well. When we look at which devices travelers use to find information, we see that smartphones are indeed the go-to device. Computers are a close second, followed by tablets and other devices. And finally, when we explored how leisure travelers are finding information on their smartphones, the overwhelming majority, 84%, reported using search to do so. So the implication here is that it's really important for brands that have in-destination marketing components or are trying to drive some of the ancillary revenue or assets to think through what the mobile experience is like for those seeking information. Are you valuing the calls that are coming in? Do you understand how people are finding the information that they need? Are they going directly to the website? Are they going to the app? All of these interactions are extremely important to value, particularly when it comes to driving in-destination information and revenue.
Thanks, Jackie. We're going to shift gears slightly here into what is perhaps one of the most riveting topics of today's Hangout on Air. We're going to look at TV viewing habits among travelers. We see that travelers are watching TV in many ways than ever before, and the landscape is changing significantly. One in 3 travelers watch their favorite TV programs not on live TV. So we asked travelers, how do you watch your favorite TV programs? And while yes, 62% do watch on live TV, look at all of the other options that are populating where a growing number of travelers are consuming their favorite TV programs. TV viewership has been fragmented in recent years due mostly to this proliferation of devices. We see TiVo, we see DVRs, we see smartphones, and we see a plethora of other options that are, in many cases, offering alternatives to the typical commercials. So yes, 62% of travelers do watch live TV. But even when they're watching live TV, 4 in 10 don't even watch the commercials. They can't fast forward, but 52% of them leave the room, probably to get a snack like I would be, going to the bathroom. 51% do something else in the room. 30%, here's a very interesting point, 30% pick up another device. So while on the whole, there are less eyeballs on those live TV commercials, those eyeballs are sometimes moving to an entirely new opportunity. Their eyes aren't on the commercials, their eyes are on their smartphones. Their eyes are on their tablets or on their laptops during TV commercials. So let's do some math. We just saw on the last slide, 62% of travelers watch live TV. And of that 62, only 58% of them watch the commercials. So in total, what does that mean? Anyone do math? Only 36% of travelers, or barely over a third, watch live TV commercials. And not surprisingly, when given the option, most travelers fast forward through commercials. For those who watch their favorite TV program recorded, 78% fast forwarded. I'll give you a second to sort of digest some of the other numbers on this slide. And while I do, reiterate the bottom line here in this discussion. When given the opportunity not to watch a TV commercial, most travelers naturally choose not to. What's important is that option is becoming more and more available and more common.
So Katie mentioned that this is a new area of the study. We do have about 10 minutes or so left in our Hangout, and we'll also be saving time for Q&A. So just a reminder, go to the Google Plus page and submit any questions up to this point on methodology. We have our Ipsos team standing by to answer those as well, and certainly Katie and Jackie can clarify any of the points that they made.
Thanks, Sean. So as the fastest growing medium in history, online video has really proven itself to be a powerful channel for information, entertainment, and education, particularly when it comes to the travel and hospitality industry. So for the next few minutes, Katie just went through how TV viewing habits are changing among travelers. I'll be spending some time going through how travelers engage with all types of video, because as you just mentioned, people are also using different devices while they're watching TV. And it's no secret that online video has really infiltrated industries across the board, and travel is, no exception. In fact, nearly all travelers who watch online video have done so just within the last month, and among those that we surveyed this year. Most of the time, that video viewing activity goes to YouTube. When we looked at why travelers go to YouTube, we found that they're going for a number of reasons. Points, hobbies, and interests. Business travelers have a slightly higher engagement with online video overall, which may be a function of the fact that they travel more, they may have more of a need for entertainment, and they're constantly on the road.
Jackie, I think this is a really interesting point. We have these discussions a lot, and we always come back to the point that travelers are just normal people. They consume more than just travel content. They're watching all different types of video across the board, and combining this with some of those inspiration-based points that we made at the beginning of the webinar, we see almost a doubly important opportunity. So we see they're watching all different kinds of video, and they're watching video when they're ready to be inspired. So when that decision hasn't even been made, when the video could perhaps make that decision. So we see a lot of opportunity there for marketers.
Absolutely. So when we look at the overall types of videos that travelers, both business and leisure travelers, engage with overall, actually what we did differently this year than in years past is we asked them what types of videos they've engaged with within the past month. So not even have you ever watched this type of video, but within the past month. And among our traveler respondents, we found a range of genres. So travelers are most frequently engaging with everything from movies to TV shows, news, food, and sports. So as Katie was saying, there's a lot of opportunities to engage. One thing that's worth noting here, while it's not shown, is that the top interest category for affluence here is news. And so for marketers looking to connect with traveler audiences through video, these are all really key interest areas that you can connect with them on. But as Katie was saying, there is of course a strong propensity to engage with travel video content as well. So here we see that over 1 in 3 leisure travelers and over half of business travelers have engaged in a travel-related video activity within the last 6 months. So here we defined a video-related activity as watching, commenting on, sharing, or uploading a video. So not only are they watching all types of video content, they're also engaging with travel-related content as well. And when travelers are actively thinking about travel, online video plays a critical role in influencing decisions along the process. So we saw at the beginning of the Hangout how online video is really key for inspiration, and we see this in a ton of our YouTube content. But it's really key for influencing lower funnel decisions as well. I'll just call out here that 63% of travelers watch online video to get ideas of activities to do once they're in destination, and over half, 54%, use video to decide on accommodations. So really there's a broad range of ways in which travel videos are really influencing decisions from inspiration down to booking. And finally, when it comes to the types of videos that resonate, we see that both business and leisure travelers are interested in both professional and community, or what we also refer to as user-generated content. So this is really great news for anyone who's really interested in the topic or looking for new ways to connect with travelers across the board. They're particularly interested in videos from people like me as it relates to review footage and branded content, but as you can see from this list, there's a ton of different ways that travel brands and other users can connect.
Thanks, Jackie. Before we get to our closing remarks, we had one new topic that we wanted to spend a few moments discussing, and that's the topic of family travel. Again, this is a very targeted consumer and targeted market that we have a lot of travel marketers that are trying to go after and understand a little bit better. So we see that families do travel. In fact, the majority of them take at least 2 trips together per year. So that's 2 opportunities to help them make those decisions. We see also that 45% of leisure travelers plan to travel more frequently with the family in the coming year. So again, earlier we talked about this idea of being undecided. This is no exception with family. So we've shown here a couple different life events. We have life events in general. Then we have family trips, and we have honeymoons or romantic getaways to sort of benchmark it against atypical or very specific kinds of vacations. And we see that family travel lands about in the middle. But there's a very high percentage of families who haven't decided where they are going to go. So how do they make that decision, Jackie? Here you see, a lot of times it's through the children. Children play an influential role in family travel. So this doesn't mean that parents are thinking, oh, I have a kid, I should probably go to a family-friendly resort. It's the specific preferences and opinions of that child that play a very critical role in the ultimate decision of family travel. And we see that starting generally around age 8 of the children. And we couldn't leave you this topic of family travel without reiterating the fact that the internet is by far the most influential source that parents go to when deciding on these trips. But we also put the children in context. So this is a view that we looked at earlier for travelers overall. But here we put in this green bar to show that children are actually the #2 source that parents go to try and make those decisions. And this brings us to almost the end of what has been a magical hour discussing the 2014 trends of travelers. Today we've looked how digital has given marketers a huge opportunity to connect with and influence travelers, more so than ever before. We've talked about how a digital presence can actually be a decision-making factor and cause travelers to judge brand. They judge a brand and they have a more favorable opinion of a brand who's across platforms, who's on video, who's on social, and who's giving them the type of information they want at all stages. We see TV viewership among travelers fragmenting, evidenced when we talked about how travelers are watching less TV, they're watching more online video, and they're watching fewer commercials and fast forwarding through when possible. We also see travelers engaging very strongly with mobile throughout. We talked a lot today about how the actions that travelers take on mobile are directly affecting what they're doing when they book, whether they're booking on a computer or on that smartphone. Those actions on mobile are critical and cannot be overlooked. And we do want to close out the day with going back to this idea of digital and the future of travel, hand in hand, but reminding everyone that it is in no way supposed to get in the way of the travel experience, but we're really encouraging marketers to take advantage of all of the new opportunities that the advent of the digital platforms and the digital consumer are putting in front of us. And we encourage everyone to take advantage and strategize accordingly.
Okay.
So we are at time. For those still on, are there any pressing questions? Perhaps I'll turn it back over to our moderator.
Sure, why don't we jump over to Q&A. Just as a reminder, go ahead, go to the Google Plus page if you want to ask any questions of Katie, Jackie, or we have Amanda and Jean from Ipsos MediaCT, our research partner. So I'll kick it off with the first one that we got in. You guys talked about business travel, traveler loyalty. Now, would we attribute this, and I guess going back to the study, would we attribute this in the study to points and those businesses offering points, or having negotiated rates with hotels?
So I don't think we actually clearly define this. We can turn it over to Ipsos for some more context around that definition.
Yeah, we didn't really get into how anything to do with like businesses negotiating rates, so we wouldn't be able to give more information on that.
Yeah, I would say generally though, I mean, we looked at this a little bit last year. What we're seeing is a lot of blending of the business traveler and the leisure traveler worlds as well. So, you know, people that are taking their habits from, you know, their personal travel, it's extending over into business travel as well. I don't know if that, you know, directly answers the question, but as you're thinking about, you know, going after business travelers versus leisure travelers, also keep in mind that, you know, those worlds are continuing to blend as, you know, access to information and device proliferation continues to grow.
Yeah, one thing I would add, though, is just the clear point, while it doesn't necessarily completely answer the question, is the fact that when we looked at the certainty of brands that people were going to go with, that even if there is negotiated rates or loyalty, most business travelers are not absolutely certain about who they're going to book with. So even with those factors coming into play, there's still room to sway business travelers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point.
Great, thank you. Next question. I think somebody liked our clip art because they asked if Angry Traveler was so angry because he was missing an ad. So maybe we'll have to talk to the illustrator about that.
Yeah.
Well, I think I can answer that. He was clearly angry because he was having a terrible experience on his mobile device. Hitting the gym had nothing to do with that.
Maybe he needs hair too.
Nice. Next question. So you guys talked about the importance of search and the importance of video. And we got a question about whether or not we're just suggesting that folks invest in paid search and in paid versions of YouTube. So maybe if you could clarify that, and also what types of free options could our customers use to enhance their search and also their video strategies?
Sure. We always recommend that marketers do what's best for their company, and that includes an extremely wide range. A lot of times, not only limited to our own products. Our specialty and our experience is in our specific product, so that's where we will be able to speak most directly. But to video in particular, one thing that we talk with our marketers a lot about is creating good content is where it starts. But if you don't let people know about it and if you don't market it properly, it's almost a waste. So there is definitely a marketing aspect behind a very holistic and wide range of marketing endeavors.
And just to reiterate what Katie's saying, I think it's always a good idea to think about the use cases that your travelers and your customers will be trying to interact with you on, and really solve for and invest accordingly, depending on how you really want to prioritize connecting with them across channels. We understand that people live in a resource-constrained world, obviously. As far as free resources, I would say it's one of our best resources that I personally really love is called our Think with Google site. I think it's just thinkwithgoogle.com, and you can go there to get case studies, see articles, interviews with marketers across industries, particularly travel, and then there's also a section for optimizing and creating device experiences across screens. So there's a lot of great information on that site as well for people to take advantage of. It is thinkwithgoogle.com.
Sure, thank you. And one other thing I'll mention is for YouTube specifically, we've just in the last 2 months completely redone the YouTube Creator Playbook. So that has really in-depth and current examples on how to be successful on YouTube. So one other question, you guys talked about the inspiration phase and how visual types of media, especially video and photos, go a long way at inspiring travelers online, either pre-destination or pre-activity or pre-booking. We got a question about whether or not video is more or less inspiring compared to photo. So for instance, would it be fair to say that photos are twice as inspirational as videos, for instance? And this is probably, my guess, is related more to like social strategy on what types of things companies share.
I don't think that we actually had that breakout of photos versus videos.
There was definitely no head-to-head comparison. I'm trying to think if there was some sort of proxy that we could go to. It kind of depends on the situation and where you catch that traveler and what mindset they're in and what context. I don't we have a definitive answer that I would feel comfortable directing marketers one way or the other on that.
Yeah, I don't think we have a direct comparison either. I think the clear overriding message, just like with having all platforms available, is that each traveler is going to choose a different way of getting information about your brand, and you just want to make sure that you have all of those available, because some people are going to be into photos and not want to do any video, while others are going to want to do video. And that's what rings out true, is that you need to be present in all those different places travelers might want to engage with your brand.
Sure. And my own personal experience, too, has just been that video is far underrepresented, right? It's just that because it's harder to generate, photos play well, but videos work really well. It's just usually underrepresented in terms of folks' marketing strategies. So next question. It was about that sub-segment of travel around lodging. So we got a question of how often you guys were able to break that out of hotel to like vacation rental.
So we didn't actually break out vacation rental in this segment.
Okay.
Yeah, you might be confused. We did break out vacation package for a few of the segmented and category-specific views, but we did not look at vacation rental in the study.
Great. So I think we have time for one last question. This one is, when it comes to snackable inspiration moments, should we focus on particular platforms? And what type of content have you two found to be most effective? So this is around content strategy.
I think that the snackable moments are just representative of all the moments that travelers are trying to find information, especially on the earlier segments of travel. So you're having a bit of back sound here. In short, though, I would not drive anyone towards one in particular, whether they're in snackable mode or whether they're in sit-down searching mode. They're looking equally for all of those across the inspiration phase in terms of the likelihood of trying to find an inspiration versus another phase.
Great. Well, thanks for answering questions. I think we have gone about 10 minutes over in order to get to as many questions as possible. If we weren't able to answer your question, we'll try to answer it on the Google Plus page. So if you have an unanswered question, please go ahead and post it. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Katie and Jackie, to just close us out.
Sure. Well, thank you guys, everyone, again for joining. This will be posted on YouTube, and we will be sharing some of these stats externally in the coming weeks and months. So thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Bye.